Hey everyone. So here's the 4 reviews I did on the 4 things I chose to feed my own passion for STEM. So I chose Science Friday to listen to. I listened to about 4 shows, and all of them kind of had the similar format. They averaged about 18 minutes. There's a quick blurb in the beginning laying out what the show's about. There's generally 1 or 2 topics that are covered. And I noticed that there's just a wide range of topics that are covered across all the different shows. One I found interesting on September 5th was about the dino killing asteroid. There's an interview that went on with the geochemist from the University of Cologne in Germany. He was a lead author of the study that was published in the Journal of Science. I always like when it's very scientifically based. He talked about a C-type asteroid that formed beyond the orbit of Jupiter, and that's what believed to have come in contact with it and bring the dinosaurs to extinction. The other thing in that episode was about dogs sniffing out the infamous spotted lanternfly. I found this to be a great interview as well. They talked about the olfactory senses of dogs versus humans versus rats and how they're training these dogs to sniff out other invasive species. I would recommend Science Friday to you if you just like to have little short snippets of different science facts that are out there, maybe some of the current research that's going on in different realms. I found them to be enjoyable for a wide range of learners. They're not too basic, but they're also not too technical. And in regards of cultivating my own STEM identity, I like this podcast because sometimes I focus on things that I'm most interested about, maybe the climate or health. And this kind of introduces me to topics that I might not seek out on my own. I watched The Farthest Voyager in Space, which was an excellent documentary done by PBS. It was created back in 2017 and was about an hour and a half long. And it chronicles the Voyager missions by NASA that began back in 1977. As the Voyagers make their way through the solar system, going from Jupiter to Saturn to Uranus to Neptune, it captures this, all the awe-inspiring discoveries made at each planetary encounter, from the planet's moons, their rings, these close-up photos, and really shows you the scientists behind all of it and their excitement with all of the new discoveries. The integration of personal stories from the scientists who were involved, I thought was excellent. There was just a real human element involved in this document. It also really helped you understand how these scientists solved unforeseen problems of a spacecraft that was literally millions of miles away. The documentary did not shy away from all the challenges that they faced, but really captured the ingenuity of the scientists who were involved in this. They also go into detail about the Golden Record, if any of you guys are familiar with this. It's a phonographic compilation of sounds and images that are representing Earth, in case any extraterrestrials were to get a hold of these, just to kind of understand what life is like on Earth. I also really enjoyed the historical side. They showed a lot of clips of different press conferences with NASA back in the 70s. Also really did a good job at helping us understand the limitations of the technology in the 70s. There's a lot of references to Carl Sagan, and also some other things in NASA, like the Challenger explosion. So I would recommend this to you if you're interested in space and NASA. I would also just recommend it because it's a great human story. It really helps the viewer, I guess, reflect on the vastness of our universe and the possibility of other life forms out there. For my own STEM identity, I don't know, I'm not an expert in space. And in the chapters that we read, she talked about kind of trying to rewire that in your own mind. So I'm not an expert now, but I think that I could be more of an expert in the future, and that it's quite accessible. There's so many different shows out there to watch about space. So this was just one of the many. So on Wednesday, I went to the Franklin Institute Museum, which was fun. I've always gone as a teacher or as a parent, so it was a lot of fun just to go on my own. I spent about 2.5 hours walking through the museum, and some of the highlights were going to the Fells Planetarium and watching Worlds Beyond Earth. They had a bunch of different shows to choose from, but I chose this one because it kind of took you outside into outer space and looking back at planet Earth, trying to help us understand why life is viable here versus other planets. I also really enjoyed the Wondrous Space exhibit. That's the first time I'd actually seen that. I spent a lot of time looking at the Mars rovers, specifically how the engineers went about creating the tires for the rovers. There was kind of like some screens you could go and watch, and they went through the engineering design process, which I thought was great. I would definitely recommend visiting this museum if you haven't. They always have a rotating exhibit, which is great. Right now, it's called Beyond the Brick, so it's all about Legos, which I've seen in the past and was excellent. They have rotating movies. There's a lot of different exhibits. It is definitely geared towards a younger crowd, but I still feel like there's a lot to learn there for adults. And in regards to my own STEM identity, I always find going to museums just pique my curiosity in a way that other things don't always. So, great time with Franklin Institute. Definitely recommend it. So, I decided to read the book How to Change Minds About Our Changing Climate, which was a book recommended by Hoffer. The two authors that wrote it work for the DOE Research Laboratory. And their purpose, as they said in their book, is to educate an army of voices, each equipped to change minds, one conversation at a time about climate change. So far I've gotten through the intro and the first section, which was the first two chapters called Misdirection. And basically, throughout this book, the scientists are taking each climate skeptic myth and breaking it down then into smaller chapters and using scientific literature, facts, using different organizations to prove that us humans are indeed affecting climate, and then looking at the skeptics and kind of the flaws in their reasoning, which they say is often cherry picking data, them not understanding the big picture, or getting confused between weather and climate. The section I read where they are trying to show that there is a consensus among the scientific community that we are affecting our climate, and also disproving that it's not a conspiracy, I thought were really well written. They're very scientifically based, and I'm excited to read on. So I recommend this to you if you're interested in climate change. It's a very easy read. It's clear and organized. I think it's easy to pick up at different times and just focus on one of the myths. There's a little humor throughout the book, which I thought was fun as well. And for me personally, I do teach about climate change, but there is so much out there to learn and to know. So I feel like I'm educating myself about something I'm passionate about that I can then pass more information on to my students as well. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to listening or reading some of your reviews.